fill in the blank. When blank is good, it's better for college football, Jake.
I'm just going to pick a team that hasn't had a real legitimate, however you want to say it, a legitimate national championship contention run recently, and that would be USC for me. I think when USC is better, I think college football is better. I know there's a big majority of the fan base of college football that I think kind of rolls their eyes at any West Coast football team being mentioned as a big brand in the sport. But I think it is good for the sport because I do think you need those West Coast teams to have a national presence. And historically, USC is one of the best college football programs of all time. I mean, if before Nebraska in the 90s, honestly, it was USC in the 60s, 70s, whatever you want to say. And now, are we even close to that time period anymore? No. But I still think with it being out in LA, when they actually have fans invested, I think just it's a big brand. Like Colin Cowherd loves the team. When you get guys, I know it's a little annoying when you get big heads like those guys talking about the sport, but in all essence, it's good for the sport. You want the Colin Cowards of the world talking about more teams, talking about more brands they're interested in. And I think USC at their best has that star power. You saw a little bit of it. What was that, 2022 with Caleb, or 23, Caleb Williams, when they won 11 games and they lost to Utah to go to the playoff. I was actually rooting for USC that day. I wanted to see Caleb Williams and USC in the 14 playoff.
Yeah, I think that's a fair answer. I think the 07 era, I have not a fond memory, but I have a very good recollection of college game day in Lincoln for Nebraska USC, and USC just curb stomped us.
Yep.
But that was like when USC was really good back then, and like that feared number 1, number 2 team in the country. That is a little bit of a different time frame for college football. I like that pick. What about you, JT? Who makes the sport better when they're good?
Yeah, I think a lot of the answers for this question are going to be kind of divisive because a lot of these teams are really popular and a lot of these teams get a lot of hate. So it's better for the sport when they're good. And I think when I'm thinking of teams like that, the one team that comes to mind for me is Notre Dame. And I'm not sure if any team in the country really gets more hate nationally and also more coverage nationally than Notre Dame. It kind of plays into the conversation that we've had on a previous pod of like, can you be a fan of a team if you didn't go to school there? And Notre Dame's like a big prestigious school. Not a lot of people are able to go to school there, but a lot of people like to root them on. A lot of history there. I feel like they're just a big national brand. They get a lot of different people involved. And I just know those teams down in the South love to hate on Notre Dame. And with the success of the people down in the South, like having them be able to cheer against somebody, you can just kind of see it now with the success that they've had recently and this year actually going all the way for the first time and having a chance to actually win the national championship. I just think it's good for getting a lot of different regions of the sport involved.
I feel like with Notre Dame, at least in my territory, if I know a Notre Dame fan or I meet one, I somehow learn where they either went to, grade school or high school, and it always ends up being Catholic. So it was just like they were raised in that religion, and then all of a sudden dad was a Catholic Notre Dame fan, so now they're a Notre Dame fan. That's just how it works out, which is just another point against those stupid people that say you have to be an alumni to be a fan. When I thought of this question, the first thing I thought of was like those big games that we're missing out on and they've lost steam at the end of the year, and they're still competing in those rivalry games, but would they be better if it was a 2 versus 3 matchup or a top 10 matchup at the least? And Auburn came to mind. I think the fallback that Auburn has had has kind of really hindered the Iron Bowl. Granted, the games have still been very good, come down to the last plays, but I just think that fan base within the SEC just heating up that rivalry and the multiple rivalries they have, but especially the Iron Bowl in Alabama, Auburn's got a good fan base. And I think when they're good, it's better for the sport because it opens up the SEC, gets another name at the top along with Georgia, Alabama, all the teams you're used to hearing now with Texas in the mix. If Auburn can get back to that good spotlight, I think it'll be better for the sport. So Auburn would be my pick there. And I don't think anybody's in disagreement of anybody's picks, right? Jake, you agree with Notre Dame? You're kind of a Notre Dame guy too.
Yeah, I like the Notre Dame pick. Justin mentioned it, that the team gets a lot of hate, but we've talked about this before. I think there's a lot of casuals turning a little bit around, that Notre Dame's a little bit more of a likable program with Marcus Freeman being the head coach.
Yeah, the Brian Kelly hate has been flowing recently.
Yeah, Yeah, you've kind of seen it. Like it's traveled with him to Baton Rouge. I think a lot of people, Baton Rouge and LSU, it's a fun team to root for most of the time. But I do think the casual fan has now turned its hate a little more towards LSU and to
I would
not
agree.
really get into some of the off the field stuff that he's just doesn't really seem like a player's coach to me, at least from the outside looking in. But who are we to judge? I think Auburn's a good pick. It definitely, when Auburn's at its highest and Alabama continues to be what it is right now, there's nothing bigger than that Iron Bowl. But sometimes, like the SEC just kind of ebbs and flows, like between its good programs. That sometimes I don't know. It always feels like the SEC has 6 really good teams. It doesn't matter to me all that much on which teams it is each and every single year, honestly.
That's
Yeah,
fair
I
enough.
think.
Go ahead,
Sorry.
JT. No,
I
you're
was going to
good.
say I like the Auburn pick just because it kind of shows the regionality of the sport, and it shows just because we're used to Bama being good every single year, so we'd like for Auburn to be good too to kind of help that rivalry. And there's a lot of, like Jake was saying, it doesn't really get talked about as much because there's other good teams in the SEC. But when a couple of regional rivals like that bring out those old rivalries that we're used to with college football, I think it makes the sport better as a whole. You see it now with like Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Bama, things like that. And that kind of made me think of another pick where I was going to say like college football is better when the entire state of Florida is good, because there was a couple years there where we were really struggling with that, with a lot of their players leaving the state and those programs really kind of struggling. But now in the last couple of years, we've seen the resurgence of Florida State, Florida, and Miami. And I think the sport as a whole is just better when the regional teams like that are doing well.
I like the way that's put.
You want a team that I think this may never get brought up in this conversation, but I do think it brings a lot of value. I think for as long as they're in the G5, I think when Boise State is as good as they are, if they become, say, like almost in essence, if they become what Nick Saban in Alabama was in the 2010s and early 2020s, what that Boise State team could be in the G5 now, and they just continue to be like the dynasty of the G5 and continues to win that automatic playoff berth out of the G5, I think it's going to bring more light to that program. And honestly, it reminds me, put it in a little bit of NBA terms, it reminds me of the Warriors back in the day when they were at their peak. Everybody was just waiting for them to fall. So if you have a team like Boise who just continues to get automatic bids each and every single year out of the G5, like when they lost to Nevada, what was that, 2007, 2008 with Colin Kaepernick, like that felt like a really David Goliath feel to it. Like I want that back again. People paying attention to the G5 and just wanting Boise to lose because of how powerful and how much better they are than the rest of their peers.
The thing that happens with Boise, though, is they actually have some history to it, just like you said, that loss in 2008. And that's like with guys our age who grew up with Boise being good, like that has real stakes in kind of how we perceive the program, where they may not move the needle nationally or like on TV or things like that, but it just adds to the variety of college football. And I think that's really good for it.
Obviously, before we go to the next segment, I want to mention I did send out the post the other day from our account. Virginia Tech would be on that list for me. I think everybody can agree. A Thursday, Friday game with Enter Sandman rocking Virginia Tech, Notre Dame. There's nothing better. That's like near the top of college football.
I think the ACC just wants anybody to be good at this point right now.